Hey there, welcome back to Innovate Africa. I'm Kieno Kammies, always keeping you up to date with the latest innovative businesses that impact lives on the African continent. And today we're going to talk about Jasiri. Well, I can tell you it is linked to the Allan and Gill Philanthropies network. What does Jasiri even mean? What are they aiming to achieve? Well, that's why we've got Peter Krause. Peter Krause, you've launched Jasiri in South Africa. It obviously emanated from East Africa. That's where it initially started. But before we even talk about Jasiri, let's talk about the Allan and Gill Philanthropies. Why do they exist? What's the purpose behind the organization?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it needs to first start with Allan and Gill Gray, but particularly Allan Gray. When he was building his asset management business, he really had this, I suppose, foreknowledge that the way to create an incredible economic growth was really through empowering entrepreneurship. I think he saw the benefit in his own life, and he really realized that in order for our country to grow, in order for Africa to grow as a continent economically, effectively people needed to be empowered to become entrepreneurs. And part of that vision sort of started in the 1980s, which is quite incredible, and it's grown over time through things like the Orbis Foundation, which spun out of Allan Gray initially, which was effectively a scholarship program for high potential entrepreneurs, both through school level and through university. And the idea is that if you can find these individuals who effectively have all the nascent potential to become incredible entrepreneurs, and you can give them a leg up, they can launch the businesses that can change our economy. And over time, it's grown. And sometime around 2018, 2019, the Philanthropies was established. And I think it's important to also acknowledge that this was part of Gill's vision as well. And what effectively the Philanthropies is it's a large umbrella group of organizations. Allan Gray Orbis Foundation falls within that. E Squared somewhat falls within that as well. And then we have a number of other things that a lot of people haven't heard about. So we have the Allan Gray Makers Foundation, which is focused on more kind of artisanal entrepreneurs. We have the Jasiri Fellowship, which is focused on effectively empowering the teachers who empower the students. And then part of that, which is relatively new, only since about 2020, 2021, is Jasiri, which has actually been operating in East Africa.
Jasiri, as the name sounds, rather exotic. So what does it mean? And what is the purpose of Jasiri? What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So Jasiri is the Swahili word for brave. And I think the name originated from that, obviously operating in East Africa, the idea that entrepreneurship takes bravery and courage. And that's where the word came from. And the idea behind Jasiri is, I suppose, entrepreneurial empowerment, but in a different way to how it often operates across the continent. So most people, or most entrepreneurs know the entrepreneurial ecosystem fairly well, and it's all based on backing the horse and not the jockey often, right? So for example, you would have an incubator, and the idea is you come to an incubator, you've got a business idea, and they incubate that business idea. Or maybe later on, your business has got a bit of traction, you go to an accelerator, and you accelerate that business idea, and then you're obviously going from there into probably more like growth stage, where you're actually looking to VCs and to raise capital. What we're saying is actually the fundamental thing that's going to change the success of any venture is the jockey, right? The actual founders. So what Jasiri originally started out as, and it's part of our two programs that we run in East Africa, is a talent investor, which is for most people something they've never heard of. And there are a couple of talent investors around the world. One of the ones that's known quite well is Entrepreneur First, but that's operating within kind of the first world context. And we really believe that this model can impact Africa in particular. So what we do is we look for exceptional entrepreneurial talent, people who may have founded businesses before, people who may be working in standard employment, but we're looking for people who have all the entrepreneur competencies that we really want. And we invest in those people. We say their business idea is secondary. Those people are the people who we want. And what the Jasiri Talent Investor Program is all about is we find these people and we say to you, we back you to start a business. And we'll support you for 12 months to start a business. You choose, it's your business. We're not doing anything. We're not taking control. We're just helping guide you, and we're going to provide financial and technical support to do that.
Now, it's one thing to say you go and find individuals to back, but how do you go about finding them? How do you find the right people?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We have just through the experience that we've had in East Africa and launching in South Africa, we've developed a competency framework, if we want to call it that. So we don't have any quotas or any systems like that. We're looking for anyone. So that's an important thing to note. But what we are going to do them is we're going to put them through the ringer in our selection process. So to give you an example, in South Africa, for our first cohort, we had 4,500 applicants. All right. Of that, we only selected 18. They went through multiple stages of assessment to get to this level, right? So that we know that we have the top talent that's available within the market. And effectively that competency will look at all sorts of things, from kind of their entrepreneurial intent, their maturity as entrepreneurs, their past work experience. Even if they were working in a job, do they have a side gig that they've been running? Are they already founders or first-time founders who've started businesses? And then we also, use some more traditional methods like psychometrics, right? So we test them on a psychometric level. Are they the type of people who have those entrepreneurial quantities, like a need for autonomy, a need for achievement? Are they really smart, right? Like, there are a lot of entrepreneurial people, but we really are looking for the cream of the crop. So are they smart people who we can really back financially and technically to start a venture? And then this all comes together beautifully in the selection conference, which is where we get, in South Africa, we had 60 people. In East Africa, they're running selection conferences with 100, 110 people on a Zoom call doing group work around entrepreneurship. So we can actually see, did they just test well, or do they really have the tools to move forward? And from that, we select our final cohort. So we're really looking at this across multiple competencies.
So what interests me is that you find the individual or the individuals, you take them through Jasiri, but some of these people have bills to pay. They've got school fees, they've got bonds. How are they able to join Jasiri after leaving a business as maybe a full-time employee, or leaving a business that they themselves had started as a startup founder, for example?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes Jasiri from other programs that are available and other things around developing entrepreneurs, is that we really back our entrepreneurs, right? We wouldn't go through the expense of a very complex selection process if we didn't really back these people. And as such, what we're actually looking to do is provide them directly as individuals with financial support, right? That comes in three different, or I should actually say 4 different mechanisms. So the first is that during the first 3 months of the program, it's what we call our residential intensive. We get all our candidates together. We fly them to Cape Town. They live at a venue. Currently, it's at the GSB, which is the University of Cape Town Graduate School of Business. They live in there, and for 3 months, they eat, breathe, sleep entrepreneurship. We're taking them through programs delivered by experts that are covering everything from team formation and just being a decent person on this program, because things can get heated, right? To things like market creating innovations, problem opportunity identification, systems thinking, business model innovation, product development. So during those 3 months, we are supporting them with food and accommodation, and obviously their travel expenses. We also give them a cash stipend, which is effectively, at this stage, 9,000 Rand a month, which will sort of cover all those other expenses. A lot of them have children, who've come down. Some of them will have like debit orders that need to be paid. So we're paying them 9,000 Rand for those 3 months. Thereafter, at the end of those 3 months, they can pitch us for an additional 9 months of support, where they effectively go back into the wild and take this business idea that they've generated and actually launch it into an actual business. And during that time, we pay them directly, at this stage, 22,500 Rand a month. So, and that's obviously also, that's net. So we're not taxing, that's not being taxed, because it's effectively an allowance, a training allowance. But so net, that's pretty good, right? That's probably the equivalent of around 28,000 Rand a month pre-tax. What we also do at that stage, for the first 3 months, everyone is an individual and we're treating them as individuals, but they're actually forming teams. So if you look at the entrepreneurial research, you know that the most effective or the most likely, the entrepreneurs that are likeliest to succeed are teams of 2 or 3. So there's a bit of a bell curve. You have one entrepreneur, their likelihood goes down. You go past 3, and you start having 4 co-founders, 5 co-founders, likelihood goes down again. So we believe that entrepreneurial teams are stronger than single entrepreneurs. So during that 3 months, there are individuals trying to find a co-founder within our cohort. After that 3 months, that business effectively gets established. They have a founder's agreement in place, or shareholders agreement in place, and that thing is now registered. When that happens, we invest in them again with a $10,000 investment, which is effectively pre-seed capital. So not only are they individually getting financial support, but they're also receiving an investment of, I suppose, depending on what the dollar is doing now, 180 to 190, and who knows what it's going to be next week, 1,000 Rand. Yeah.
The matching process, having people from different backgrounds with different personalities, it must be very difficult to be able to match them. So do you get involved in trying pairing the right people, or do you allow these things to happen naturally?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of 2 ways to answer this, right? So we're currently in this process of people finding their version 1 teams, if we want to call it, and they're going to have to all tell me, of my 18 entrepreneurs that I'm working with at the moment, who their version 1 co-founder is. And I say version 1 importantly because some people have likened the Jasiri program to Entrepreneurial Love Island, right? People are coming together, they're forming teams, they're breaking up, they're making up again, and we have a lot of fluidity within that process. The one thing that we do not do is say, you have to work with this person. Because ultimately, I always say, we treat you like adults. If you wouldn't be here if we didn't believe in you, and in order to believe in you, we need to treat you like adults. You need to find your own co-founder. Part of that also means that we need to equip these people to find their co-founders. What are the types of things that you need to think through? What are the types of people you need to work with? We have a combination of kind of business people and technical people. So often that's quite a nice match when you have a very business-centric founder and a technical co-founder. So sometimes people are drawn together for that reason, but we're not actually saying you have to find a technical co-founder. The other component is, I mentioned we did psychometrics during our selection process. So we've actually developed a tool that is really like your classic psychometric tests, probably not dissimilar to something like Discovery Insights or kind of a Jungian 4-quadrant model. And we give this tool to people not to tell them who they are. It's a tool and not a master. But we give this tool to them to help them create a common language around their strengths and their challenges, and to figure out who are the people that mitigate those blind spots or those challenges, and who are the people that are really going to their strengths are going to be very valuable to me.
I could ask you about the perfect co-founder, but I think I'll stick to what the attributes of a near perfect co-founder is when it comes to Jasiri.
That is a tough question, and I'd say that there's no one size fits all in this environment, right? We're all people, we're all complex. No test can tell us who we are, and we all have strengths and we all have challenges that we have to address. I would say one of the traits that we really look for in entrepreneurs is a need for autonomy, a need for achievement. Those 2 things are really, really important to us, because these are the types of people. I mean, entrepreneurship is hard. Anyone who tells you that it's not hard is completely deluded. It is a hard, lonely road, even if you have a co-founder. And we need people who have that resilience to kind of keep moving and actually don't want to just go work in a corporate job, or don't want to go work in a job and get told what to do. They need to have their own vision, and they need to exercise autonomy. So that's one of the characteristics that we look for, and we weight quite heavily.
Now, this is newly launched in South Africa. If you do have 1 or 2 stories that you can share, that'll be great, maybe even from East Africa. But I think more importantly, if you've got some insights based on your initial engagement with the individuals, the cohort in South Africa, that would be valuable as well.
Yeah, so this is a tough question for me, because we've only just launched our first our first cohort in South Africa. So while we've run, we're on our 7th cohort in East Africa. We've only just launched our first cohort in South Africa. So I'm a bit, I suppose, divorced from the businesses. We've launched over 80 ventures in East Africa. So there's a lot, and there's a lot of potential there. The market is a bit slower, so I don't know if all those businesses are, we don't have like one lights out story yet. But I would say in South Africa, the stories that I can tell you is the quality of the people who've come. We have incredible people who founded incredible businesses, who've decided to step away from those entrepreneurial endeavors, which is kind of like leaving a child, to start their next adventure. And it's just amazing to see, our age range is between 24 and 38. Our average age is around 30. And it's just amazing to see the quality of these people, the level of engagement, their excitement and passion. For me, that's the only real success story I can tell you now, because we're basically 1 weekend. 1.5 weeks in.
I always say that Innovate Africa is a storytelling platform, and I think story is so important when it comes to getting people to understand what you're wanting to achieve, what you're wanting to do. So what is the story that you are hoping to tell in South Africa?
I think this comes back to the Allan and Gill Philanthropies vision and mission, right? The vision is an empowered and prosperous African citizenry. The mission is to eradicate or attack poverty through responsible entrepreneurship. What we really want to create in this context is a group of responsible entrepreneurs, right, who are building incredible businesses and creating jobs. One of our theories, and it's a working theory in this, is when it comes down to the type of venture, right? And that's one of the things that also makes our program very unique. So, most accelerators, incubators, etc., they would have either a particular sector requirement, or they would have a kind of a tech requirement, perhaps, or something like that. We don't have anything like that. We can say the world is your playpen. You can find any business in any sector that you want, obviously excluding sin industries, but any business in any sector you want. It's your venture. It's not ours. It's your venture. The one caveat to that is we have this focus on market-creating innovations. And at the risk of getting a bit academic, I'll just kind of share a brief overview of what that means, right? So most businesses operate as a product innovation or an efficiency innovation. So the classic examples, let's just take, banks, for example. You would have someone like Discovery that really, their strength, or Discovery Bank or Discovery as a group, their strength is really product innovation. They are launching these new products on a consistent basis that are creating the innovation within the organization. An efficiency innovation would be your classic standard bank slogan, right? Simpler, better, faster. So what both these banks are doing is they're innovating in different ways, product and efficiency, for example. The downside to that is they're effectively innovating to the same class of consumer, right? People who are already banked. And but a market-creating innovation is more like a Capitec or a Time Bank. It's about finding those people who are unbanked and creating a product that's applicable to them. And the reason why we take this approach, that we want you to create market-creating innovations, is that we believe market-creating innovations is the rising tide that lifts all ships. And there's a lot of research done around this. There's a fantastic book called The Prosperity Paradox by Clayton Christensen, Harvard professor, who really talks about the power of market-creating innovations to create prosperity within emerging economies. And I'll give you one example, right, which is, I think, the most tangible example that I can think of. Early part of the 19th century, would it be, there were these things called cars, and only the rich and famous could afford a car. And it took one man, it was in the beginning of the 20th century, but anyway, it took one man, Henry Ford, who said, actually, this thing called a car is actually going to be the thing that can transform economies, transform lives. And he figured out a way to create a car in a cheap and effective, mass-produced way that was available to a new market of consumers. And the impact on that was that effectively all these things had to change about society to make that possible, right? There were more cars on the road. That meant roads. That meant there needed to be bigger roads. People could all of a sudden travel between cities or between towns, so they needed to create infrastructure to manage that, improve the quality of the roads, etc. It created jobs. That builder could now transport materials from where he purchased them to the building site more effectively. And just this innovation of cars and making it available to a new class of consumer had this incredible effect on how we see the world today and what we can do. And that's why our focus is really around there. And there are a myriad of examples of these people who saw this opportunity, this class of non-consumers, we call them, and effectively created these businesses that have changed the continent, changed the world.
Sounds really fascinating. So when does the next cohort launch? When can people apply, and how long does this process actually take?
Yeah, so fantastic question. So our first cohort is running effectively from April to March next year. So that's 3 months of the residential intensive and then 9 months of what we call the venture creation phase. We are opening applications this month in April for our cohort 2. And that application process takes a while. So that effectively will mean that our cohort 2 will start in February next year. So February next year, we'll have another group of entrepreneurs. We're looking to expand the group to somewhere between 30 to 50 people, not just 18. And the idea behind this is, depending on kind of our success and board approval and all these types of things you have to go through, we're wanting to do 2 of these cohorts a year.
Peter, is there anything that you'd like to share in closing?
I think the only thing I would add is that this is a phenomenal opportunity. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for people. We have such an amazing entrepreneurial talent within South Africa, and our country desperately needs entrepreneurs to come and create jobs and attract capital flows and to actually make a difference in this country. We can look to government to change policy, we can do all these types of things, but the reality is that we need entrepreneurs to come and have this impact. And this is a way that you can achieve those dreams of entrepreneurship while still having that, I wouldn't want to call it de-risk, because entrepreneurship is always risky, but effectively have those barriers to entrepreneurship removed.
Peter Krause, thank you very much for your time. Peter Krause with Jasiri, looking at backing individuals, because at the end of the day, no matter what your business, things can go wrong. And it's the people behind the business that can, as the cliche goes, pivot, take the business in a different direction, down another road, but keeping that business sustainable, protecting jobs, creating new jobs. And that to me is impact. Thank you very much for tuning in to Innovate Africa, and I'll see you next week.